Hello and welcome to the Marketplace. It is our deep dive look at the NBL free agency period. We've got so many names that are locked away for NBL 24. This is a great chance for us to take stock, have a look at what teams have got locked away and who they should be signing before the start of next season. The race to NBL 24 is going to be fascinating. Pete Hooley is right across all of the depth charts. Hools, we've got Melbourne, Cairns and Tasmania on the menu today.
Well, let's start with Melbourne United, because another team last season that was disappointing overall with what they put together. They came home strong, if not the hottest team to end the NBL 23 season. A lot of moving parts going into that season with Jack White moving on and everything that happened. This year they look to be able to really put together a solid lineup. We talk about strong locals. I don't think there's going to be a better local contingent than what we're seeing at Melbourne United. Luke Travers, the signing there, Chris Golding, but JLA coming back. Shaylee, we know he's taken some time off now, but he should be okay, healthy to go. And then the big rumour that's been going around a little bit is Matthew Dellavedova going to be back.
Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way straight away.
I mean, that's the one, isn't it? Because it's popped up, his name's popped up as someone they'd be potentially going after, a Delhi type. And anytime you hear coaches and anyone say, we want like a Matthew Dellavedova type, normally that means the conversation's been happening there with that player. And I think that's exactly what would be happening. And if they can lock that away, then you're probably looking at all local starting five. We've
seen their depth chart. We're taking a look at it again now. This is a team that doesn't want for much. We're going to talk about what they've still got to plug in, but gee, you look at this team from a depth chart point of view, it's strong.
Well, as the depth chart stands right now, so you've got Chris Golding in that standalone guard spot. The way that if they get that Delhi type or Delhi, which has been rumoured, you're probably looking at starting Shaylee Delhi, which they did. Chris Golding moves to the 3, Luke Travers and JLA. Now, that's a really, really strong starting lineup. And from what I'm hearing is they're looking for a really good scoring import guard to be able to potentially come off the bench. Dean Vickerman notorious for tossing around different starting lineups early on and often in the season. So take the depth chart with a grain of salt for Melbourne United, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do sign, if they get Matthew Dellavedova locked away. Delhi, Shea, CG, Luke Travers, and then JLA, and it'll be one of the best defensive teams in the competition.
I think really interesting with the way that they've put this roster together as well is that they've got established names, which is fantastic, but there's an eye to the future with this team as well. Tanner Krebs is still quite young. Bowen coming in, very, very young and got a lot of talent. Flynn Cameron as well, a really highly sought after young New Zealand talent. So yes, they're in it for the here and now, but there's also a look towards the future as well.
Yeah, it's a really good balance, isn't it? Because again, you've got these youngsters to come in, and Tanner Krebs is poised to have a really big season, I think, under Dean Vickerman. Luke Travers, we know what he's going to bring, but Kyle Bowen, it's a really good signing for them. Flynn Cameron, if you haven't seen much about him, he is going to be one to watch in terms of the future. It's a really good signing. I know Shaylee, another local Kiwi as well. So it's going to be exciting to see these youngsters grow under Dean Vickerman. And then the re-signing of Brad Newley, I don't think can be understated. When you've got those youngsters on the bench and they're going to practice together every single day, and Hook Porty coming off injury, Brad Newley, throw him anywhere in the depth chart, because I think that's how they're going to use him when they do. He's going to be used sporadically. He's playing the power forward for Frankston right now in the NBL 1 South. He's trying to just figure out different spots, and you've just got that veteran head in the locker room, and especially for that bench unit and practice every single day, it's going to be invaluable for help them.
Ariel Hook Porty is a 7-foot next star. We know how passionate he is. We know the energy he brings to this team, but he's coming back from an Achilles injury, which is a big injury for a big man to come back from. If we're looking at a depth chart here, would there be a thought from Melbourne to potentially have a little something extra in that 5 spot?
Maybe, yeah, because you think about what happens if, okay, either there's foul trouble or Hook Porty. We know the biggest probably knock on Hook Porty before he got injured was his motor. How long can he last on the court? Coming back from Achilles adds to that a little bit. And it's not like they've got a Dave Barlow in the 4 who can play that 5 spot if needed, even a Mason Peatling now. Kyle Bowen, he's probably an undersized 5 if he had to go there. He is an undersized 5. Luke Travers can't play the 5. And it would be something you potentially think about. But knowing Dean Vickerman, he's looking around the league and saying, okay, certain matchups here and there, maybe we go an ultra small ball lineup. We just go ultra with Luke Travers at the 5, and we just switch everything, but we just run and gun. We don't really run a whole lot of sets. So there's plenty of stuff to work with, but that's an interesting point comparing on how he comes back from this injury.
So what is the biggest priority for Melbourne United? As we say, they don't want for much.
Well, the way you bring up that point, you think maybe it is some extra backup, but I think it is that scoring punch in the import guard spot, because, again, that rumour is that Delhi's going to be back for Melbourne United. Even if they want that Delhi type, he's not going to be that massive offensive threat. Shaylee, they can both score the ball when they need to, but it's going to be Chris Golding and JLA, which is a great place to start. One of the best 1-2 punches in the league, which will be. But what happens? Who's that third string? Who's that bucket coming off the bench when they won the title? Scotty Hobson. So what happens there? I think that's what they go after. A couple of names that were floating around. Do they have that conversation with Ray John Tucker? Once again, he was a scoring punch, but to come off the bench potentially. Well, Tyler Johnson is another one whose name floats around a little bit. He made it clear he wants to come back to the NBL. I'd be having that conversation picking up with maybe we call Tyler Johnson. I think he'd be a great culture fit, and again, a scoring punch coming off the bench.
To the Tasmania Jack Jumpers, as we go to air recording the marketplace, still no signature for Milton Doyle. Feels like this conversation has been going on for quite some time, and you're looking at this team, Pete, from a depth chart point of view. He's pretty crucial to the way they're going to line up.
Well, as we've spoke about when it comes to all of free agency, you get the figureheads done and normally you kind of put the pieces around. Some teams have gone the opposite, loaded up the bench like the Bullets, and everything else to take care of itself. We see that from Tassie, but they need that marquee signing. They need that piece that can carry them. It was Josh Adams in season 1. It was Milton Doyle last season. There's really no ifs, ands or buts. They need to get that done for Milton Doyle. And if they can't do that, well, it's back to the drawing board, but they also need to nail all 3 import spots. Wouldn't say they've done that in the first 2 years. They've nailed 1.5 out of 3 in the first 2 years, but the way it looks right now, I don't mind the bench. We know the culture with Scott Roth. Need to nail these 3 import spots.
Let's talk about the point guard position. They've had Josh Majette for the first 2 years of their short life here in the NBL. It looks pretty unlikely that he'll be coming back, even though he wants to be a Jack Jumper. They've been pretty clear in saying that it looks as though they'll go in a different direction. So what sort of player do they need in that point guard position?
It's interesting because we think about Tasmania and they've never had that explosive type of import guard that's won the MVPs in recent seasons. So you kind of think, how would that look in a Jack Jumpers uniform? It all depends on what happens with Milton Doyle, isn't it? I mean, that's the next piece to fall. If you get him done, you still need another, I think, a scoring weapon to be able to go alongside Milton Doyle and really take the pressure off. If you got Milton Doyle done and you can get a really strong Ray John Tucker type, but just throwing his team out there for every team today, but you get that in the 3, then maybe you do have that conversation with Josh Majette. He wants to come, you've got that leadership on and off the floor. Maybe that's something you can do there, but there's some really big gaps to fill, and I know we say it every year, never worried about the way the Jack Jumpers are going to play, but they need to get some more offensive scoring, I think, after the first 2 years.
So from a big man point of view, Will Magnay as a starting 5 with Jared Bairstow, Fabian Krislovic as backups, and Jack McVeigh, he's nailed down that starting 4 position. Is there enough there?
Oh, it's hard to think, isn't it? Because again, another team where if someone goes down, Will Magnay, he looks really good right now, but he has had his injuries in the past. What next? Krislovic's done really well in his opportunity when he's there. Jared Bairstow, I believe, on his last year of his contract. So do you try and stock up a little bit behind them? Do they love playing small ball as well? You mentioned Jack McVeigh starting, spent a bit of the time last season coming off the bench and being a scoring punch when Rashad Kelly started. A lot to work with, and unfortunately, if you're a Jack Jumpers fan, you're thinking, what's happening? Where's everything at with Tassie? Well, I'm sure it's all coming down to Milton Doyle, because you lock him away, you've got the rest of the whiteboard to fill. All of a sudden, if that doesn't happen, then you go back to the drawing board and have to start from the top and let it trickle down.
I want to finish off with the Jack Jumpers and ask you about a tweet of yours. You don't normally delve into the news-breaking space, but just explain a little bit more.
Yeah, I heard a little whisper, and it turns into be a very strong whisper from the Apple Isle, that local exciting guard Taron Armstrong, playing at Cal Baptist overseas in college, won't be heading to Tassie. He had the opportunity. There was a lot of talk of him potentially transferring even to the likes of Gonzaga, even to some really big schools. Have heard that he is going to be turning professional. He's going to sign in the NBL, not as a next star, as a main roster, and it's not going to be in Tasmania, which would be a really big loss, I think. And again, I know what Scott Roth does. There was an article that came out. He didn't name anyone, but he kind of spoke about how they don't promise anything, that everything isn't given, it's earned, which I love. I think that's what he's preached. But as a local talent who's really raised a few eyebrows, and Josh Giddey's a big fan of Taron Armstrong's game, watching him in college, and he's had some success at Cal Baptist. It's one that you thought would just have to get done. You'd think, okay, this is a local kid that we want to get back. We want to get Tassie locals in and under the system. Interesting to think that he could be in the NBL and it's not going to be in the Apple Isle.
Okay, so with that in mind, they've missed a really exciting young prospect. What is the biggest priority for the Jack Jumpers?
Well, if it's not Milton Doyle, even if it is Milton Doyle, I still think it's that point guard spot, because Josh Majette was inconsistent a lot last year in terms of shooting the ball and scoring and helping take the pressure off. You look at the roster, they've signed Drimmick, which is a great punch off the bench. Sean McDonald as well, he's deserved his spot, but where's the scoring coming from? Will Magnay's not a 20-point-a-night scorer. Jack McVeigh can be a 20-point-a-night scorer, but is he ready to take that leap up to be that ultra guy? I'm not sure if it is next year, unless he has the right pieces around him. They need to find some points.
To the Cairns Taipans, they've lost Keanu Pinner. That has hurt them. There's no question about that. You get that one out on the table straight away. They did re-sign Bull Quoll, which is a great result for them. Are we starting to get a bit of an idea with Adam Ford of the type of player that he wants in his system now?
Well, no doubt. And from all reports, when Bull Quoll called Adam Ford and said, look, I want to come back and let's do it again, it was an awesome thing because he was getting some big offers elsewhere. We know Sydney were going hard at him, but he just loves, obviously, that relationship he has with Adam Ford. They've got Tajir McCall locked in. This team is going to be young, no matter what season it is. They're always going to be young and running, gunning right now. And that's the way they play. It's fun because they buy into the culture. And I mentioned that name, Taron Armstrong. From all reports, it looks like he's going to be heading up to far north Queensland to join Adam Ford in the factory and start his professional career under 40.
Even just with some of the players that won't be there, you look at someone like a Majuk Deng, who's been a fabulous servant here in the NBL, but I think that was a pretty clear representation of where Adam Ford's going. Not having someone like Majuk even to return as a backup player.
Yeah, well, last season they had two players in their whole roster who had played over 150 NBL games. That was Mirko Jeric and Majuk Deng. Now, both of those not there, all of a sudden they become even more inexperienced in terms of the NBL. But we saw the growth in Keanu Pinner in just a short amount of time. Sam Wardenberg, we saw how outstanding he was last season. You bring back to Jim McCall, he's their heart and soul, and I think their motor, and Bull Quoll as well. They've got some pieces that no matter what happens, it's going to be a tough outing. And you talk about what happened with Ben Air. I think a lot of people were wondering why Ben Air, he got his opportunity, he got rewarded with a contract, that option wasn't taken up. Well, from all reports, that is because Taron Armstrong is going to be heading up there, and that makes a lot more sense now than it did when it first happened.
Yeah, and even looking at the Cairns depth chart, you would look at that and think, well, why is there no Ben Air in this team? Well, now I think we understand why. To the import point guard spot, if they choose to go down an import point guard, last year they had Shannon Scott, who was a pass-first, facilitating kind of point guard. Is that the sort of player that they need again, or do they need a flat-out scorer?
Oh, it's hard. I think they're still having the conversation with DJ Hogue. I think they're trying to get it done. But as Corey Homicide says, yesterday's price is not today's price.
No,
and
sir.
that has skyrocketed from last year. But that's one, if they can get it done, I still think you really want to go after and try and get DJ Hogue. They still need, I think, that game breaker. When the game's on the line, who are you going to throw the ball to? Yes, Tajir McCall can do it. We know that he has his issues with consistencies looking after the ball. They still need that type of player. Whether it's a point guard, whether it's a wing, I think they need to nail that one. But otherwise, they're going to be competing. But you look at the rest of that depth chart, they're going to be really young in the front court,
they are.
in the centre position, but they're going to be exciting. They're going to be playing through mistakes. It's always going to be a team that can compete, but I still think they need that closer. Who's going to be their closer? Tajir McCall can do it. How often can he do it? He needs a bit of help. They need to find that.
What's the biggest priority for the Cairns Taipans?
Yeah, it's got to be that closer, doesn't it? Whether it's DJ Hogue or it's not, he can come in the wing spot if you want to throw it out there, where he plays alongside Bull Quoll, or Tajir McCall can slot into the point guard if needed. Or if it's a point guard, I think they need that scoring closer. I think Bull Quoll's due to have a breakout season offensively. We know he does on the defensive end, but they need some points, and I think that's where it'll come from.
Pete, you've been absolutely outstanding right across this free agency period. Our work is still far from done. There's still a lot happening, but great work on the marketplace, diving into the depth charts, and now it's going to be very interesting to see how teams fill the rest of their spots.
I'm going to blink and it'll be NBL 24 already.
Summer League not too far away as well. Thanks for being with us on the marketplace, of course. As we always say during this free agency period, nbl.com.au is your home of all of the latest news and information, NBL's social media platforms as well. Until next time, thanks for being with us on the marketplace.